What's up, everyone? Welcome to the NFL DFS Kickoff Show, only on Fantasy Six Pack. I am your host, Keith Flemming, joined by my brother, Joseph, the Brain Matz. Joe, how about Cedric Tillman and Cade Otton? What a good week it was.
Yeah, I mean, we said the Cade Otton one made absolutely no sense, and he should be in every lineup. And lo and
And I
behold,
actually did it, Joe.
got that
That's
one
what was
right.
most impressive was
Yeah,
I actually listened to myself and played him in 100% of lineups. Did the same for Tillman. I want to give a big FU to Brees Hall, who prevented me from having a monster day because I cashed in basically every cash game lineup. But I mean, seriously, Brees, I think, had like 8-9 points. If he would have had, say, 15, 20, it was a difference in winning 3-4 times the entry and 5 to 10. So thank you, Brees Hall, for once again. Actually, thank you to the Jets coaching staff for we thought that they had figured it out, that we should give Brees Hall like 90% of the carries and not involve Braylon Allen. And what did they do? It was, I think, like a 65-35 or 60-40 split. I just was throwing stuff. And on top of that, Brees was so much more effective than Allen, which is even more infuriating. He was averaging like 6 yards per carry. Well, I think Allen was averaging like 2.4, but that's his life. But we're going to try to hit a banger
yep.
this week. I can't believe we're already at week 9. For those that are watching the Thursday night game, the thrilling 2-6 New York Jets versus the Houston Texans without CJ Stroud, and now also Stephon Diggs, with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, the 0-0 tie. Like Corley finally got off the snide, only to pull the Deshaun Jackson, aka the Kyle Pitts, last week where he fumbled the ball. So what a moron. Not sure why people keep doing that, Joe, but just cross the plane and then you can celebrate all you would like.
It seems so simple.
Well, it's my dad always says, God doesn't give you everything. These guys are some of the greatest athletes in the world. So that's probably why a lot of them are idiots. But let's get into the QBs this week.
Let's do it.
Hard week, like at first glance, right? Or do you disagree?
Definitely for the quarterbacks, it was a little rough.
So obviously, to me, if you're going to spend, which I probably am not, because I worry about Saquon.
I think so too.
Jalen Hurts,
Yeah.
right? Is that's the guy in cash? Is like you can play him. I mean, he's been really good. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal that we sort of forgot about. And again, fantasy people. I'm not talking about like Jalen Hurts is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's had some horrible games. He scored at least basically 16 points, and all of them.
Right. He's been fine. Like you said, there's criticism to be had in the real life. Is he good at football stuff? Fantasy, yeah, it's been pretty smooth sailing for the most part. Especially now that AJ Brown is back, which helps him a lot in all aspects of football, fantasy, and real life.
Which, again, the Tennessee Titans are morons. I like to remind people that they let that guy go. It's kind of like my Atlanta Falcons, who can't get a sack right now to save their life. And, again, you pass on Jalen Carter for a running back and follow that up by not taking any defensive player in the draft that you could have had for a backup QB. There are consequences to your actions, just like in real life, these football teams. And it's good to see the Titans just be an absolute mess when it's like you had arguably the best wide receiver in football and you just gave him away for nothing. From that point, I go way down. Like, to me, the next guys I'm even considering really are Cousins, Prescott. If you want to tell me Burrow, okay, I could go there, but I just think I would rather have either Kirk or Dak in a game that I think there's going to be a lot of points in. You got anybody you want to make a case for before we get there? I know Goff's been on fire too. He's only 6. I still don't trust Goff outdoors.
That's fair. I mean, I will say if Jordan Love is healthy and starting,
right,
obviously, then I'm intrigued there because, that's a game where my expectation is a lot of points. And
Detroit can't stop the pass, like, period.
Right. They do what Detroit has trouble with. And obviously the other thing too is it's a team with 4 wide receivers can hurt you, which can be trouble sometimes when we're trying to pair people with Love. But when you're just trying to defend the pass, super difficult.
To your point, do we just go naked with him? Is he one of the rare cases that you say, you know what? I think if I really like him a game, screw it. I just won't play any wide receivers and save the money and spend it at.
Now, obviously the upside is none of them are. I mean, Reed's gotten expensive because he's been the most productive, and Tucker Kraft is no longer the just slot him in there because he costs $4,000 and it works out more often than not.
And he's also just another guy that some weeks he might get 6 targets, some weeks he might get
that's
one.
the whole difficulty, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but Detroit plays a ton of man defense so far this season. That's meant Dobbs and Watson have been the most productive. Wixie's the highest.
Didn't Watson see a touchdown again last week, or am I imagining things? Because then they played a man defense last week, I'm pretty sure.
They did play a man defense last week. And then Reed has not been productive, but Detroit's been the worst this year covering the slot, which is where Reed normally is. So there's kind of an argument for every single guy, which means there's an argument for Love most of all.
Right.
And if he doesn't play, then I think Malik Willis becomes the most intriguing lower price, really lower priced guy to me. Because I just don't think he's going to be able to sit back and throw the ball 16 times and we're just going to run it. I don't think that you can win this game that way. So to me, if I still buy into this team, and at this point, I'll buy into Malik Willis on this roster with this coaching staff based on what we've seen. So yeah, to me, I'm actually more intrigued with this from a quarterback standpoint.
To your point, he threw for 200 yards and scored 25 points versus Tennessee, which people want to mock. But Tennessee's defense is good. Like, their offense is just awful. But their defense across the matches is actually good.
Yeah, is the passing game there is horrendous and super turnover prone. Whereas if they could just run Tony Pollard 30 times and count the defense, maybe there'd be some hope there, if unentertaining hope. But I think Malik Willis is even more interesting than Love as far as just quarterbacks. Obviously, I would downgrade every pass catcher a little bit if it ends up being Willis. But I'm generally in agreement. The two guys I'm kind of circling the most are Cousins and Dak.
Yeah, Cousins scares me a little bit just because the Falcons have been known to, run the ball a lot in matchups versus really bad run defense. And the Cowboys' run defense is awful. Bijan's been really good. I could see a very high, like both Bijan and Algier week, where they're similar to like the Carolina game a couple weeks ago, where Falcons are just like, look, if you can stop this, then we'll throw. Otherwise, we're just going to, pound it down your throat. Dak, to me, is extremely intriguing because the Falcons, again, no pass rush, 6 sacks. It is right now, through 8 weeks, the 4th worst defense this century at getting pressures and sacks. We're now 24 years in.
Century.
Not good. Yeah, 24 years in now, so that's not good.
Oh my gosh.
I appreciate that sack. Again, for somebody who was all over the Jalen Carter thing, it's just an ultimate victory lap. Because how's Bijan working out for us? He's a great running back, but you're telling me he's making that big of a difference to where 4th worst this century, and we're a pretty good team. So Dak has faced really good defenses at getting pressures and sacks. It's pretty remarkable. 5 of their first 7 opponents are top 12 in total sacks. Every one of the teams they've faced this year have 18 sacks or more. The Falcons have 6. And I just think Dak, with that kind of time, is going to be able to pick them apart. I like Lamb. I like Ferguson. You could tell me Tolbert. Like, you could tell me Dottle in the passing. I just think Dak is going to be, and especially he's kind of had some disappointing games. And by kind of, I mean 5.2 and 15.6 points the last 2 weeks. So even though what I just said is, pretty well known, Falcons can't get sacks. They have 6 this year. I think people are going to sleep on him, and he's going to be relatively low owned too. And I just think, and the Falcons are going to score. Like, that's one great thing about this Falcons offense. We score points. So it's going to mean teams have to, and we're good against the run, meaning not that the Cowboys can run the ball even if we're bad against the run, but we're good against it. So I love Dak. The 2 rookies, though, any intrigue in Caleb or Bo Nix?
Yeah, I would say that there is. because I was all over Caleb last week. That blew
Yeah, he let
up
us
pretty
down.
hard in my face. But I mean, the Cardinals though are the type of team that you want to look at the passing game when they're going up against them. They are one of the funnel to the pass defenses this year.
Yep.
And DVOA, which again at this point in the season now DVOA is factoring in the opponents. So it's it's not perfect because you can usually still you can be kind of shit and you can beat up on bad defenses and it throws it a little off. But 15th against the run, so perfectly average defense against the run, 29th against the pass. So this is the way to attack Arizona. And I mean, the thing with Arizona that makes them difficult is they could be playing at a really high level on offense, and this could become a shootout. Or the Bears defense could just be like, hey, we're good, and Arizona has one of their kind of off weeks. And then we end up in some weird 17-16 game, and you're like, what the fuck? Why did I put 3 guys in my lineup from this game?
Fair.
So, there's risk, but obviously, I think there's certainly opportunity.
Is Nick's more appealing then? Because
Caleb.
like I also worry about like the Swift game, right? Like this is an Arizona team that you running backs have had success. To your point, they want you to throw, but I mean Chicago's may say screw it. Swift's been unbelievable, which I never thought.
And then as soon as we all gave up collectively on Swift, it was like they figured out exactly how to use him, and he's been awesome. And you're like,
unbelievable.
Well, what the?
And
then DJ Moore, who I keep betting on, nothing happens.
Because I wouldn't have blamed any of them for dropping him. But I mean, what do you think the percentage of people that drafted him? Because I went back and looked. He had like 70 total rushing yards through 3 weeks at like 1.7 yards per carry. If it wasn't for like his 6 or 7 receptions, it would have been unbelievably low points. And, like PPR, even PPR leagues, it would have been really rough. And then since then, he's averaging almost 5.5 yards per carry. It's just like you turn on a switch. So good for Swift. Nix is just like at the rushing upside. I know what's so funny is he did no rushing. He did get the touchdown, which don't get me wrong. That's huge. But I mean, he's really starting to throw it well. 284 yards, 3 touchdowns. I know Carolina's secondary is awful. So is Baltimore.
Not great.
And Baltimore is going to score points. Like, don't we think even against Denver? Like, I think Baltimore's offense is pretty much bulletproof that they're going to score points against anybody, especially now you add Deontay Johnson into the mix, like on top of all these other weapons. And I just think that means Bo is going to have to run. He's going to have to throw. If he doesn't turn it over a lot, I find it hard to believe he doesn't score 15 to 20 points, and he's still in that price range for cash that's worth it, right?
I mean, in general, yeah. I think my only gut thing away from this game would be, well, A, I guess that I've never been a big believer in Bo Nix.
Right.
And then B, the Ravens losing last week is probably my biggest pause here.
Oh, it's get right game.
Yeah, if it's like, fuck, we just got absolutely roasted by Cleveland. Jameis is making his first start in forever, and they torched us. But at the same time, that's not exactly a one-off.
No.
Like they have given up 13 touchdowns through the
Gardner
air.
Minshew, remember, cooked them in the second half of week 2 for the comeback win.
But yeah, just the last 4 weeks, 13 touchdowns.
Whew.
And then on the season, 311.6 yards. So we're rounding up, 312 per game. So on average, you're getting that bonus. I mean, they've only had 1 week all season where they've given up under 260 yards.
Who is that?
You're at least... That was to the Bills, actually, which
Allen. Okay.
Which would be
them. Oh, the revenge game. I said, yeah.
Right. See, that would be my one argument is when this team, when everyone's super motivated and they're on the same page.
Henry too, probably a lot of Henry, right? Even though I know
sometimes they
come
out, and they have that potential, and they've had guys in and out of the lineup, so I would double check the health of the secondary in Baltimore. But yeah, I mean, like you said,
this is why I like talking stuff through. This makes a lot of sense. Seriously, it's
as
in
good
Baltimore.
as So yeah, I mean, you could go either way. I wouldn't be putting Bo Nix in cash games.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the bigger fields, I think there's stuff that's worth it here. Plus, obviously, anyone we pair him with is not going to be expensive. So, and Baltimore again. if they're giving up 13 touchdowns through the air, no surprise, they've been awful against wide receivers. So yeah, I think there's value there. It's just that there's higher risk to me than the Cousins and Dak one. Although my main problem with Dallas, because I want to be all in on Dak, because I think everything you said makes sense. I think the way it plays out where Atlanta could end up being in on the run game, that's kind of been always the question. There's been so many weeks where it's like, oh, good matchup for Kirk. And then it's like, well, but then they ran for 200 yards. The problem with Dallas is just I don't believe in anyone besides CeeDee Lamb. And that's kind of my problem every week with them, where I'm just like, all right, like Lamb should get 100 yards in this game.
Think about Baker last week, though, Jay.
Everyone else.
No Evans, no Godwin.
That's true.
And
that's
he
a good point.
cooked them. This defense is, I'm telling you, like, it's a joke. Like, they get so little pressure. And I think Dak would given time. I mean, he proved it early in his career when he had those great offensive lines. Like, he can throw. It's just an issue of or even I was telling my dad, I actually think our secondary is good. It's just when you have 4 or 5 seconds,
absolutely.
The receivers are going to get open. Like, that's just what happens with time. And, that one thing scares me, doesn't run anymore. So it takes away, the easy yardage. Yeah. But I will tell you, there's a guy that I'm very close to being in a majority of my lineups, and he's super cheap. He's super undervalued. It's Justin Herbert, 5,300. I'm telling you, I had to go look because, again, I'm a nerd. This kind of stuff I love doing. I was like, man, Herbert looks like he's playing a lot better. The first 4 games, he was averaging 22 pass attempts per, 144 passing yards per game. He only had 24 rushing yards, was averaging 11 points per game on DK. Well, you remember he was banged up to start the season.
Right.
He got banged up again in the Pittsburgh game. So after their bye, he looks much more like the Justin Herbert that we have known and loved. And on top of that, it seems like they figured out, the Chargers coaching staff, that they have Justin Herbert, who's very good as well, because he's now throwing it 35 times per game over his last 3. Well, I think it's at least 34 pass attempts in each one of them, averaging double the passing yards, 288 yards per game. Big thing, 59 rushing yards, 40 of that coming last week, where, again, I just think he's feeling healthy. We know Herbert has the ability to run, and he's scored almost 19 points per game on DK the last 3. And 5,300, again, 19 points per game. That is well above that 3X number we look for in cash. And by the way, this Cleveland's pass defense, it is also leaking oil, if you will, kind of like what you're talking about with Baltimore. Over their last 4, they've allowed 7 passing touchdowns. 10 different pass catchers have a reception of 25-plus yards. They give up big plays left and right. You have 5 different QBs that face them this year with at least 20 yards rushing. 4 with 40-plus rushing yards. Now, granted, they played Lamar. They played these guys that really run. But Herbert can do that. He proved it last week. Again, 57 of Herbert's 83 yards have came in the last 2. And then we'll talk about my favorite wide receiver this week. Browns run a lot of man. McConkey is already elite versus man. Top 10 both 100%. In fantasy points per target and also target rate, which is at almost 38%.
Right. So, he's just straight up an elite wide receiver against man defense.
So tell me again, at 5,300, and I think Cleveland's offense, by the way, is going to continue to score points with Jameis Winston. I know you look at this Chargers defense and you go, oh, how great it is. Again, this is why I tell people sometimes you have to look at who they've played. They have played this year Gardner Minshew, Bryce Young, Justin Fields, Patrick Mahomes, not what it used to be, Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, and Spencer Rattler. Do we really know this Chargers defense is elite versus the pass? I don't think so. So I think that Herbert could be a very sneaky play in a game that I actually think there may be a good bit of points in, because we saw Cleveland played at a lot faster rate last week and they threw it a lot more. I love Jameis again this week in MME. I can't trust him in cash. I would much rather play Herbert. But I think that both of them have options. But Herbert may end up, again, at that 5,300, stacking him with Ladd. I can then get a lot of these other expensive players that I want into my lineup. I think they're like 10-8 or 10-9 together, which I think may be the way I go. And again, I don't love any of these QBs, right?
Right. That is an interesting one because I had not really been thinking about him. But yeah, I'm 100% with you on the Ladd part. And it's like, well, if I think Ladd's going to have a big game, and so good points about maybe Herbert being a little more right, also adjusting to a new offense, just being more comfortable.
Oh, by the way, I meant to tell you, since week 6, most first down pass attempts in the NFL.
That's a pretty big change from the offenses we have seen.
No wonder he's doubled, right, the passing yards that he's seen the first, right, like 5 weeks or 4 weeks plus being injured. Like I do think that there's signs that he was hurt, because it's been a totally different guy since to buy, and 5,300 is dirt cheap.
It's wild because he's cheaper than Jameis.
Yes.
Like, and I know, some people will get angry anytime you give Justin Herbert, like real life praise, because they're like, what was he ever accomplished?
I'm all in. I think he's a good QB.
Yeah, like, to me, he reminds me of Matthew Stafford, except probably a little, same talent, but probably, I don't know if it was the coaching or just his natural thing, where being a more gun shy Matthew Stafford those first few years. And Stafford was a guy I was constantly underrating for years. And then finally, those last few years in Detroit, I was like, you know what? I think this guy is actually really good. And then wins the Super Bowl goes to the Rams. And so, yeah, the fact that we're getting a guy who, at least talent-wise, I would say, top 5 type quarterback. And if he's not in your top 10, I think you're being silly overall.
I do too. Yep.
And he's under 5,500. And like you said, it's not like this Cleveland defense is the Cleveland defense of last year. We love the McConkey play. Obviously, yeah, there's some risk if
Johnston's coming back. I meant to point that out too. He's been out. He's going to be back.
So obviously, there's some risk if you're doing this in cash, but if you're doing anyone in this price range in cash, you're talking about some real risk. So yeah, I'm pretty intrigued with this one now. So I like that.
All right. I love when I make a case that you want to know on and
won me over.
Convince it, yeah. Well, we'll see though. You can either thank me or be like, fuck Keith on Sunday. The RBs this week are and this is again why I kind of lean to that Herbert decision, right? And why I think that may end up being what I do at the end of the day, because I kind of want or at least one or two of these. Yeah,
one of those top guys.
Bijan, Williams, Barkley. I definitely want one of them. I may convince myself I want 2 of them, depending on how much I love CeeDee Lamb or if I play Dak. Which guy do you want? Because for me, I think Bijan being so much cheaper is the safest for cash. 25 points per game in the last 3. He's seen like 54% of his rushing yards have came in the last 3. It's 38% of his receiving yards. What I love is he's almost seeing 4 more carries per game and 1 more reception than he was in the first 5 games over the last 3. But you're not going to tell me that Kyron or Saquon versus Jacksonville and Seattle is not a very appealing matchup as well. So, like, where are you feeling?
This really is a just massively tough call. I mean, I'm probably leaning to where you are, just because, I mean, I just feel like we're due for more big Bijan games. Just because, I mean, he's been doing it the last few weeks. And then, so we're seeing, again, this was, it's like I said with Breece Hall the other week, where it's like, all right, we're talking about the guy who was the number 2 with Hall, and now number 3 with Bijan, consensus running back. And he's priced at a really reasonable rate against a defense that has just been, now granted, the Dallas defense has kind of gotten bad at everything. Like, they still rush the passer pretty well, because if you have Micah Parsons, you're going to rush the passer well. But they're not even elite at that anymore.
Nope.
And then, you go down the line on just, like the PFF rankings. They're bottom 5 in tackling. They're worst, dead last in run defense grade. So, yeah, and like you said, that has kind of been the MO for Atlanta. What, they're not afraid to just throw it around, obviously, as we saw in that one Tampa Bay game, where if it's called for, they trust Kirk to light it up with London and everybody. But yeah, just when you have a defense that's not putting up any resistance against the run, you got Bijan, and then again, Algier in. If you think this is a blowout, which we don't, obviously, because we like the Dak play, but we've seen Dallas just get their ass kicked, just get run up and down the field this year. You could, once again, this is one of those ones where it's like, you could talk me into the double Atlanta play. So yeah, because of the price difference, I think that's where I'd lean. But man, if your gut says Saquon, your gut says Kyron, I'm not arguing anyone out of that. It's just, yeah, I like the extra money, so I think I'm with you overall. But yeah, I mean, Jacksonville has obviously just been bad in general. And if that's happening, the Eagles are winning, Saquon will feast. Kyron has been the constant, as we've said all year, where it doesn't matter what's going on with that team. And it's not like Seattle's been good against running backs. So there's no wrong answer here. It's just Bijan frees us up to do a little bit more. And I think his floor is obviously lower. I don't think his ceiling is actually any lower than those two guys. So I think overall I'm with you. But yeah, overall, I think your main point is correct, which is I want to save money in some other spots because I want to pay up for at least one of these running backs.
Or the other option that I keep going back and forth in is you could convince me to play really any of the following guys. A-Chain 6,700 versus Buffalo. He had a great game. Remember, with Tua going out early against them earlier this year. Hubbard versus New Orleans, who is also a defense that is just hemorrhaging right now. I do believe that that's going to be just an ugly slugfest, though, but with a lot of values for DFS this week in it. But my favorite is Swift. Again, 6,400 versus Arizona. I mean, it has been just a Swift show, man, since, again, those first 3 weeks, which you cannot hammer home enough how bad it was. So I got it right here. 68 yards on 37 carries the first 3 weeks. I think I might could get 68 yards on 37 carries. And then since then, of course, after I told everybody, drop him. He's extremely droppable. He scored a touchdown in every one of those games, 386 yards on 72 carries. He's averaging 23 points per game on DK. And to me, what's been most impressive, he scored 21.9 or more the last 2 weeks, or exactly 21.9. He didn't catch a pass in either one of those, Joe. So even without catching passes, he's getting 20 burgers every week. And the only running backs who have played their last 3 games averaging more points per game right now are Joe Mixon, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Jamar Gibbs, and Breece Hall. Every one of them are 1,100 or more than Swift this week. And only Mixon is averaging more than 2.5 points per game in that 3-game span. So, and this is a Cardinals team, again, that last week, Dolphins running backs, 21 for 134, 2 touchdowns. Oh, by the way, they also caught 7 passes for 61 yards and a touchdown. This is a Cardinals defense that allows 140 yards per game at 4.6 yards per carry, and then 10 rushing touchdowns. So, and Chicago has been very consistent. Basically, since their offenses look better, and that is they're going to go with DeAndre Swift. He's going to get 15 to 20 carries. I think if that happens again versus Arizona, he's going to score a touchdown. He's probably going to score around 20 points. And for cash, he's just really safe. And I feel like he's still at a price range, 6,400. That's not outrageous. You can convince me to Montgomery because he's only 100 more right above. But I just think at the end of the day, Swift's probably going to get more touches because Gibbs has been so good lately for Detroit. It's getting harder and harder, even as somebody like me who loves Montgomery to justify. Maybe you should give Gibbs the ball a little bit more, especially in close games, which I think this Green Bay Detroit will be if Love plays.
Yeah, running back for me this week is kind of a tough one in that there's a high number of guys I like.
Yep.
Tony Pollard did not practice today, but if he is a go versus New England, then I really like that one. Because like we said earlier in the pod, if you're the Titans, your dream scenario is always, let's just run the ball into the ground. Let's churn clock. Let's try to not have Will Levis blow it, or whoever is starting for Tennessee in any given week. I mean, the Patriots have, again, first 2 weeks.
Would you co-sign Tajee Spears if, say, because Tajee looks like he's going to play. If for some reason Pollard is out, would Spears then become like almost an insta start for you in cash?
I mean,
like 5,300, I think, or something great.
Obviously, my biggest worry with Spears is, are they going to give him the amount of carries I'd like to see him get if Pollard is out?
Okay.
But at 5,300, yeah, I don't think I'd care. I would put him in.
The 47. Excuse me, he's 4,700.
Okay, even better. Because, the Patriots, 93 yards the first 2 weeks combined, over 100 given up to opposing running backs on the ground every week since.
Wow.
They have given up a rushing touchdown in literally every single game this season.
Oh, my God. I didn't know that.
Yeah, again, the Patriots are also a team you're usually beating. Now, Tennessee, that's less of a given. But, it's Tony Pollard, the only time he's really sucked this year is when they got their asses handed to them from the get. And that just seems unlikely in this game. So, I'm in on any running back for the Titans. Like you said, A-Shane, again, how do we attack Buffalo every single season? You want to attack them on the ground. So the fact that now this is a functional offense again, you have to like that. I think James Conner against Chicago is an interesting one, because I know Chicago's, 9th against running backs on the season, but this is one of those underrated, like, you want to funnel towards the run defenses. And it's not because they're terrible against the run. It's because they're really good against the pass and they're mediocre against the run. Again, DVOA 6th against the pass, 22nd against the run. And then again, DVOA is accounting for the average play. When you look at percentages, if you ever go on FTN, that's what everything is equalized to 0%. Chicago is negative 12.5, and negative is good for the defense, bad for the offense. Negative 12.5 on defense, negative 2.6 on running the ball. So obviously you see a negative, you think that's bad. Well, running the ball is way less efficient than passing. Right. So the fact that 10% more efficient to run the ball against Chicago than pass is huge. It's a massive gap. So, if I'm Arizona, what I want to do is pound them with a run. I want to go heavy as much as I can, which they've shown an inclination to do. And then I'm trying to hit you with some deep shots when you creep up. So I like that one. Chuba Hubbard. Obviously, we're a little bit worried now because Jonathan Brooks sounds like he's going to play. The Saints have been horrific stopping the run this season. Again, this is a team, that gave up 200 yards rushing to the Buccaneers.
No, to Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. Make sure you classify.
Right. And Rachaad White's not been the most successful running back. He's obviously been very good catching passes. But to your point, we're talking about a Bucs team that's not known for running the ball. We're talking about them using their second and third running backs, and they run for
Sean
200
Tucker out there
yards
looking like Barry Sanders, dude. I was like, who is that guy?
They
That's Sean Tucker. Oh, didn't recognize him.
I mean, if someone's giving Dallas a run for their money and just being unable to stop the run, it is these New Orleans Saints. And again, and that's also backed up by the PFF grade. Who's the second worst run defense after Dallas and just their grade? It's New Orleans. And it's also the Panthers are the third worst. The Patriots are the fourth worst. So again, there's opportunities here.
So maybe it's a week you stay in this price range, right? And go with 2 or 3 of those backs.
And then even Stevenson, again, Tennessee's not been bad against the run. But if you're banking on the Patriots are in this game, they are generally following the same game script as Tennessee, although I think they have a little more faith in their quarterback either way. But I think that's an interesting one too. So I think you could just load up on guys in the 6 range and you'd be fine. But Kyren, Saquon, Bijan, probably two of those guys are going 25 plus, maybe 30 plus. So there's
Stevens has also been really good with Brissett. Now that you mentioned that, because looking back, like what is it? Basically, his 4 best games have all came with Brissett as QBs. Week 1 and 2, 17, 24.6. Week 5, which was actually his last start, 19.2. And then last week, we know he came in early and he scored 23.5.
So, yeah, like I said, you probably don't get excited when you see Tennessee versus New England. And in general, you should not be. But when it comes just to the running backs, I think it's really interesting. Because of the price, I don't love Kamara in the same way. But even then, he's facing Carolina and he's banged up. So, but if he's
got 2 words for you, buddy, why I don't like Kamara this week.
Okay.
Taysom motherfucking Hill. And we'll get to him at the tight end position. Carolina's so bad versus the run. Last time we saw them in a competitive game versus he scored 2 rushing touchdowns near the goal line. Versus I'm all over. We'll talk about it when we get tight ends. But that is the only reason I just can't trust Kamara. I think Taysom Hill is going to get a lot of the goal line work.
I mean, I still like the matchup there, but I think, to your point, that's a reason to worry more about him in a way that we're not worried about. Well, definitely Saquon and Kyren, because we know those
especially
two guys,
Kyren, because Hurts might get some of the one, but Kyren's going to get.
But those two guys are just
the goal line.
Dominating snaps. And to your point, Kyren even safer because his quarterback will not steal touchdowns on a push. So, but again, running back,
Stafford out there getting pushed all of a sudden.
Oh God, at his age, let's hope not. Is there anyone that you like obviously, like I said, Tajay Spears?
No, I want to talk about your boy real
quick. Being the starter.
If Tracy is cleared, do you just keep rolling with this guy because it is unbelievable? Like, looks like you guys may have got lucky in the Barkley debate, at least in the sense that you lose Barkley, but man, this kid looks like. How excited are you as a Giants fan?
I'm very excited. I was pretty excited. My biggest regret this year in season long is drafting Tyrone Tracy for $1 in my auction keeper league.
Oh, you dropped him.
And then 4 weeks in, I'm like, or 3 weeks in, whenever it was, I was like, and then of course the reason I dropped him was because I was like, I need running back help.
Yeah.
And so I went for someone else.
He hadn't seen the field at all, right? Like,
first month of the season, I think he had like 12 carries for 29 yards or something. He had a few receptions because, again, this is a guy who was a receiver for most of his college career, which is one of the reasons he dropped to. I think he was a 5th round pick. But of course, then I didn't see that Singletary was out before someone else in the league did, and they picked him up. And now I'm stuck continuously just starting the combo Bucks running backs in my running back spots.
Yikes.
So that's been a little surprisingly productive though so far, but I don't trust it.
Right.
But as an actual just Giants fan, super excited. He was a guy who, again, receiver most of his time in college, really has just the one season at running back, didn't see heavy usage. But all of his metrics, it was smaller sample size, but killer metrics. So when he got drafted, I was super excited that we got him. Again, high enough to draft him in a fantasy draft. And I'm thrilled that they saw the wisdom of we need to be developing guys like this. Like, it's not we dislike Singletary, but this guy seems like he has more juice. He runs. But like not a lot of running backs I can recall because he looks like he's always off balance.
Yes.
And then he gets 8 yards and he gets 12 yards. Like he's jittery in his like movements, even, and not in like a controlled way. At least it doesn't look controlled, but he's productive. And like, again, him in the passing game, because of that receiver background, super dangerous. So I'm with you. I don't expect this game to play out the way the first game did. Obviously, I don't expect the Giants to keep Washington out of the end zone a second time. And in a game they still scored 21 points in. So, I expect this to be a little more of a shootout. Obviously, I think the Giants will most likely be trailing for the vast majority of this game. And again, though, I don't think that matters too much with Tracy because he has that receiving ability. as far as talent and opportunity, if he gets cleared, he is certainly one of the highest guys on my radar in the under 6,000 for sure.
The only other guy under 6K that I like, and again, running back this way, I can go ahead and tell you will be the one that's probably Tracy's probably the cheapest I will go, barring somebody being ruled out late or whatever.
Right.
It's Chase Brown at 5,900 versus Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it hasn't been great, but if you really look at it, he had that great game versus Carolina, truly awful run defense, right? He's since played Baltimore, the Giants, Cleveland, and the Eagles, who are all pretty good to great run defenses. Like if you look where they rank, and he scored 11.4 points or more in 3 of 4. The Raiders are not one of those run defenses, to where I do think there's a good chance he can get off, because he's kind of shown his floor as of late is like 11, to 15, 16 points, because again, that Cleveland game was ugly if you watched it. But that intrigues me, because if you think they're going to really wall up Vegas, I guarantee he scores a touchdown. There's a chance he gets 2 like he did in the Carolina game where they scored, 34 points. Again, he had the touchdown in the Baltimore game where he scored 40. If they're going to score 30, 40 points, he's going to probably end up with 16 to 20 points. I mean, they scored 17 last week and he still got 11. So he's the other guy in that range, but I'm probably going to be spending down at wide receiver, tight end, and spending more than I normally do on my running backs this week, because to your point, there's good matchups where I'd rather spend up in that and then take a shot on some of these wide receivers.
Yeah, that's generally where I see myself headed this week as well, where, like I said, the under 5, when you're going real under 5,000, I think, again, I have a little bit of interest in Algier just because this is the chance that it is just the absolute pound the rock game against Dallas. And then, Tajay Spears becomes a smash play for me if Pollard's out. But, I think you're right. In general, we want to spend up a little bit at running back, even if, again, you don't have to go with those high price guys because there's enough guys in the 6,000 range. And one other thing, actually, because I was pissed off at myself last week for not talking about these guys because it occurred to me and I talked myself out of it. The Detroit running backs.
Yeah.
Last week, I was like, hey, Tennessee's defense is kind of good, blah, blah, blah. It's like, this team is way better than Tennessee. And if they're way better than Tennessee, they're a team that already loves to run the ball, they'll probably do it a lot. And of course, that's exactly what happens. And those guys go off. And then this week, it's just, this Green Bay defense has not been as bad against the run as they have in previous seasons. But it's still the best way to attack this Green Bay defense. I mean, you go to PFF's O-line, D-line matchup, they have this as the biggest advantage of an offensive line versus a defensive line in this entire week slate. And by a pretty wide margin. So if you're factoring that in, and then if you're smart, and I think Ben Johnson and Campbell are smart guys, they know the Goff outdoors stuff. So why, if you can run the ball effectively this entire game and keep Goff from having to make any plays under duress, that's what you're going to do. So, again, price-wise, is Montgomery probably my favorite in that mid 6,000 range? Probably not. Do I like Bijan more than Gibbs? Probably. But I think it's something that you at least have to be considering. And, if you're someone who's just all in on this Detroit team, and, man, I certainly don't blame anyone for being all in on this team. And even more so probably if it's Neighbors, because you just think, hey, even better chance that they win as well as Neighbors has played. That could end up being the play. And maybe people are going to be.
I was like, man, Malik Neighbors is playing QB for the Packers.
Yeah, Malik Willis. That's right. We're about to talk wide receivers. I'm getting my Malik's.
You're like, look, I love Malik Neighbors, but I don't
honestly,
think he did QB, Joe.
I don't know. With that if you put him on that team, with that, that line, those receivers, that coaching staff.
Damn, kind of a shot at Malik Willis
give
there,
Malik
Joe.
Neighbors a couple of months, give him an off season. I think he could do it. I believe. So
I love it. All right. Wide receivers this week. again, because I like the running back so much more, and because I'm really close to just being like I'm going to play Herbert, because again, it'll allow me to get probably one of those, like either Bijan, Kyron, Barkley. I can get two of those 6K guys, stack them with Ladd. I got a tight end that I can almost guarantee you I'm going to play. I already mentioned him, Taysom Hill. And then I can take one of these top guys, and then because of the cokers and stuff, where there's several guys really low that I'm going to be all in on this week, kind of set, right? So the question is it A.J. Brown or is it CeeDee Lamb? Because I think I could fit either into my lineup by doing that, because, Coker's 3,600. I think Taysom's also like 38. So I think I'm going to be able to do that. I'm going to play obviously a dirt cheap defense, but I'm okay with that. Which of those two guys? Because that's kind of where I'm at, is do I want to go CD or do I want to go Brown, or do I want to go a little further down? Because the other guy I'm considering, if he is cleared to go, which they say it's nothing major, is Puka.
If it's me, it's AJ Brown.
Okay.
I mean, again, I almost think if you're doing Dak, you have to do CD. I just don't. It doesn't if CD doesn't have a good game, I just don't see Dak having a good game, because again, that's what this team is right now.
Very fair.
And yeah, if you're giving Dak 4+ seconds to find CD Lamb, I think he'll generally succeed. But I mean, to me, it's the man zone splits where CD this year, 0.7 fantasy points, 0.76 fantasy points per route run, elite number against man defense. 0.39 against the zone, which it's a reasonable number.
Yeah, but Falcons run a lot of zone.
But yeah, PFF's numbers, Falcons run the least man coverage in the NFL.
Oh, is it? I know it was like 5th or 6th few weeks, so they've been consistent with that.
I mean, different places chart it slightly different, and then if you look at the numbers on PFF, they usually are accounting for 90 to 93% of plays, because there's some plays that aren't charted as specifically one or the other. Maybe you're doing kind of a mixture. But yeah, so Atlanta's running no man, basically, just over 10% of plays. And that's the thing you most want to see if you're going with CD Lamb. And then AJ Brown is in one of those feast situations where you're going up against a Jags team which has not been good in coverage and also runs man 40% of the time. And AJ Brown this year against man 1.19 points per route run. So there are some guys, like an average receiver is getting that yardage.
That's actually slightly down too, Joe. It was just, I think, last week almost at 3 points. So, I mean, and that was because, again, he was probably targeted a few times. Hurts might have missed him, but he is just right now toasting anybody that wants to try to play that dude mano a mano.
Yeah. Yeah, he's first in points per route run. His PFF receiving grade is 91.7, so it's not like, I don't know. I don't even know how it would be luck if you're the first, but it's elite there. Yards per route run is 5.5. It's absurd. And again, he's been the guy who's been hurt. So when we look at his target rate, it's not like he's played games where Devonta Smith's been out and they've just been force feeding him because of that. The target rate's 36% against man defense.
What an asshole.
So everything is saying this is a matchup where you want AJ Brown against a team that's bad on defense, that runs a ton of man. He has the second highest matchup advantage this week on the PFF. The guy who's the highest is it's our guy Jalen Coker. So we'll see if that's another cheap play that we want to ride.
I'll go ahead and tell you right now. Yes, I do. He is the Cedric Tillman K-Dot play this week. 100% of lineups. You can't convince me otherwise. You can't.
You know what? The one that most disappoints me, because he would be in all of my lineups, but he's not in our slate, is Josh Downs.
Yes.
Because as soon as they're Flacco's back, and I was like, oh, they're playing Minnesota. And then it was like, oh, and they're not.
What
anymore.
sucks is you have to do the Thursday to Monday. I've said forever they have to fix that because I was gonna do it and realized
Why
that
is it
basically the Thursday night game
Just
had started,
options.
and I'm like, well, fudge, that's over with.
No,
So.
yeah, it's stupid. But yeah, for me, if we're spending up at receiver, we're spending up on AJ Brown.
I like it. Again, Tillman is going to be in 100% of lineups for me. I am getting more confident, and when there's just a guy that is there that is too good of a value, the data and everything backs it up, you just go all in. And that's what I'm doing. He saw one target the first 4 weeks, and the last 4, he's put up a decent stat line just for a young receiver, period. 14 targets, 12 receptions, 186 yards, and a score. All that is amazing. 10 or more points in 2 of 4. He's 3,600. But the big one, Deontay Johnson, is gone. Xavier Legette and him, it's their show. And then the bigger one was he had not eclipsed 62% of snaps heading into last week. That number was almost 70%. So that's good. But even more importantly, he ran 80% of their passing routes. And oh, by the way, Bryce Young played last week. He is going to play again this week. So it's good to see that he saw that kind of volume and had that good of a game with Bryce, because that is what you're getting yet again. This is Saints secondary that allows the 5th most yards to wide receiver at the 10th highest yards per reception. And this reminds me so much of I think Kevin Tompkins brought this up on the waiver wire. I thought this was a great comparison of Tyler Boyd in Cincinnati. His first year, his last year before T. Higgins got there, he had like 90 receptions, 1,000 yards. And then the first year with T. Higgins there before they drafted Jamar Chase, he had like 90 receptions, 1,000 yards. And it's like he's a good receiver. He's not a great receiver, but he's good. But he's going to get a huge volume, right? Because he's basically at worst the number 2 passing option in a team that was throwing a lot at that time. This is the exact same situation. He will be just like Tillman, $700-800 more next week. And I think that will happen no matter what, because between ownership, his targets and everything, like whether he has a good game or not. And then you talked about the Saints defense is atrocious. So I just think that 3,600, you can't not play him. He's too good. He is literally the same case I made for Cedric Tillman and K. Dotton last week. That is Jalen Coker this week. I'm all in. I'm going to learn to live with whether these work out or not. It's too good of a value to get in on this like right now, because I'm telling you, if he has a big game, just like with Tillman, he's going to be up in a range where I like Tillman a lot this week, but he's not an insta start, right? To where this to me, insta start, and you just live with it. You hope you have the kind of week like Otten and Tillman did. If he has half of that at 3,600, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, it's weird how many Panthers I'm like, am I going to put this guy in my lineup? Yeah, Coker, almost 3 yards per route run, only 22 routes so far. But almost 3 yards per route run against man defense. And Saints are top 10 in man. Xavier Legette has 2 touchdowns on 50 routes against man defense and a 22% target rate. And again, that's keeping in mind Deontay Johnson was killing man.
Yep.
So he's gone. Both these guys get more playing time. Obviously, their prices are not high. The Saints defense sucks. There's a lot of temptation there. So yeah, if I'm going cheap, I think Coker's he's going to end up in most of my lineups this week, because he's got, again, if you tell me a guy under $4,000 has the highest advantage on the PFF rating stuff, that guy's going in my lineups. So how do you feel about Drake London this week? Because when I look at the overall arc of the season and how productive he's been, and I look at a Dallas defense that doesn't really scare me, again, the only thing that's really above average on this defense is the pass rush. But even that's not elite anymore. The coverage has honestly not been very good either, as much as the run defense is distracted from that. And he only costs 6,700. I'm pretty tempted with Drake London there, especially when I look at the guys around him.
No, I like London a lot. Mm-hmm. The reason I don't think I'm going to have a lot of them this week is because if I'm going in this 6K price range, I want Chris Olave. And I love Drake London.
I see that.
Do not get me wrong, but Olave is 600 cheaper. It looks like Carr's playing. Carolina's defense is like historically bad across all metrics. Like they're bad.
They're awful. They're
everything.
Awful.
And it's again another reason why I'm so high on Coker at 3,600 is if Carr plays, I think New Orleans is going to win actually pretty easily this game. And they will score points because they got Hill back. That like they're actually healthy for the first time in forever. And we've just seen that Olave has kind of put it together. Like I know the KC Tampa game was rough, but remember the KC game was the first one with Rattler starting. Tampa game same day. They kind of finally figured it out right week 8, but he had a stretch after week 1 with Carr 12.8, 20.6, 16.7. And the target volume has been very good. So I just think it's another situation where, because for me this week, I'm simple. Like I'm learning to try to simplify these things. And for me, it's going to be 3 backs probably in the 6K or higher range. AJ Brown is you pretty much have talked me into him. I mean, it's just like the lineup that I just built while we were talking because I was trying to see exactly what I could get away with. And if you want to go with the Ladd Herbert lineup, I can then go, let's get it to the best possible lineup. Let's go there. And all right. So you could go Herbert, Barkley, or actually let's go Kyron because I actually like Kyron. So I can go Herbert, Bijan, Kyron, AJ Brown, Ladd, Coker, Tillman, Laporta, who we'll talk about in a second with the tight ends, and then go up and play Atlanta, Cleveland, Chicago, like all these defenses. I'd have $2,900. Again, if I wanted to go the other way, you just basically take one of those 2 expensive running backs, take any one of those guys in the 6K range, and actually, I can get 2 of those guys, and you just take out Tillman. We'll see if it changes, but I really do like Ladd versus Cleveland. He's 5,600. If I play Herbert with him, that gets very easy with what I can do. And I just honestly, if I'm going to change that, it's going to be a deal where I would play Hurts with Brown probably in cash, and then play Tillman and Coker both is what I would do. Because I do still think Tillman is a decent play because I just went over the list of who the Chargers would play. Are they really a good pass defense or not? We'll find out. And a lot of people have made the comparison. Tillman is a lot, built and runs and everything like Mike Evans. And we know how great of a year Mike Evans had with Jameis Winston. And again, Tillman was hit 3 times, including the 2-point conversion, just in the one drive he had the week before. I'm just trying not to get too complicated in cash. And the more I'll talk about these guys, I'll get away from that plan when I know I'm playing Coker. And overall, I like the running backs more than I do the wide receivers this week, at least especially in the expensive range. And you made a great case for A.J. Brown, which is just what I need. I need to know which one of those expensive wide receivers. Yeah. So what other receivers, though, are you looking at?
Well, again, I'm at least intrigued. Obviously, the hard part, again, is figuring out which guy to go with every Green Bay wide receiver.
Right.
Again, going by what FTN has, the Lions have given up the most yards to number 1 wide receivers, the 3rd most yards to number 2 wide receivers, and the most yards to number 3 wide receivers.
Jesus.
Now, they're 3rd against tight ends, so maybe this is the week we say, hey, no Tucker Kraft. But yeah, everything else, you go, all right, what's going on here? And then the Lions, 1st in man coverage rate, dead last, unsurprisingly, if they're 1st in man, in zone coverage rate. So again, this year, Dontavian Wicks has a 41% target share. But then he's also averaging under a yard per route run because he hasn't caught some of those passes. The guys who have caught them, are Watson, who has a touchdown and 74 yards and 37 routes. And then Dobbs, who's 116 yards, so easily leading the team. And he has 2 touchdowns. So Dobbs, once again, against man, he's kind of the guy I'm leaning towards the most. The one thing I'll say about Jaden Reed, though, he has 8 yards and 53 routes this year, which is obviously insanely bad,
right?
Especially for someone who overall is having an awesome season. But last season, that was not the case. Where last year, against man, I don't have the PFF stuff that I always look at, the article. It only goes through week 17. I had never found a week 18 article, so I'm missing 1 week there.
Right.
But he had the most PPR points versus man of anyone on the team last year. Now, Watson did run fewer routes, and so actually had more points per route run, but he was ahead of Dobbs easily last season against man. So there's a chance that maybe it's all fluky, although, again, like Kevin said on our other pod last week, he very much has that Deebo Samuel role this year, especially, which is short routes, shallow routes, find holes in zones, get a ton of yak. So if I'm leaning towards anyone, once again, like I said last week, I like the Dobbs play because he's the guy out there in the 2 wide receiver sets. Granted, I think we'll probably, especially if it's Love, we'll see plenty of 3 wide. And that's what we always do. But if he's the guy who's always out there and he's the guy who's been most productive against man this year, and as bad as Detroit's been against number 1s, numbers 3s, they've also been horrible against 2s. So Dobbs at 5,700, I think he's right there to me in that, again, there's a lower floor than the Olave play. But again, I think the ceiling is just as high because this looks like a shootout. He's the guy best positioned to take advantage of that in this offense.
No, I think that's a very fair case. And I just, again, I get so leery, though, in cash with the Green Bay receivers because it's just so hard to predict them, right? And like that
makes sense. Yeah.
The lesson that Dave Eddy has taught me more than any other is you just you really got to go with expected volume, etc. And again, that's like why I'm so huge on Coker this week. It's just like I'm pretty confident he's going to get 6-7 targets. To your point, against a defense that runs a lot of man, so it's just like why not? Again, like Olave is somebody you could definitely talk me into at the wide receiver. Mooney for all the same points you're about to make about London.
Right.
Because, again, you would assume, I guess, that Diggs would be, probably on him more. Do any interest in Parker Washington? Because that's the other cheap guy that you could convince me needs to be in the lineup with Coker. Remember, he had monster games last year down the stretch in a similar situation where the Jags were just a walking wounded at wide receiver. It appears they're entering that territory again, whether Dave Davis ends up playing or not. We know Christian Kirk's out. Brian Thomas is questionable. If it's a deal where Thomas or Davis is out, Parker Washington is absolutely somebody I'm going to have in lineups, and that'll be a way for me to actually build cash lineups where I really go get those expensive guys where I just play Parker and Coker, right? And then I could probably, get up to a Hurts QB and play him with Brown or whatever with that lineup. But he's the other guy that I just keep going back to as potential volume. The Eagles are a pretty good run defense, like overall. And then again, the issue with Jacksonville, at least, has been is all those other guys left are pretty much down the field targets. Parker would take up that Kurt role with Ingram of more of the underneath stuff. Just seeing at 3,600, I think he'd have a really decent floor this week. And it wouldn't shock me at worst if he scores like 8 to 10 points. He scores a touchdown or, maybe they get down a lot where they're throwing a ton in the second half. It would not shock me off. He got 15 to 20 points.
I think, like you said, if the opportunity is there, obviously we expect the game script to be there. So I can see that one. The other one that is intriguing to me is, again, we think Denver's going to have to pass.
Oh, Devon?
Well,
are you going with Franklin?
I'm going Troy Franklin this time.
I
Now,
like it.
Again, high risk. This is prior to last week, he played 2 straight games with over 50%.
Yeah, what
snap
was
share.
the cause for his snap share to go down? Do you know? Just that they were.
I don't know if it was just the way the game went.
Because it looks like
Carolina,
they didn't run a lot of 3 receiver sets. Because Devon Bailey was the same deal, where he went way down.
The week before they smoked New Orleans and he plays 51%. So I wouldn't think there would be much of a difference to me between those two games.
Fair.
And obviously, 14% isn't that many snaps. He played 6 fewer snaps overall.
Bailey's number was way down. He's a slot receiver,
right? Which hurt me because I was playing him. But again, I like the matchup here. First, Baltimore giving up 1 million points, 2 wide receivers. But Baltimore plays not more man than zone, but as far as rankings, they're higher in man because 11th in man, 19th versus zone. Still, obviously, they're playing twice as much zone as man. So always keep that in mind. Unless we're talking about like a Detroit, it's usually teams are playing significantly more zone, which is why, again,
too, right? Like Jacksonville's up there. Aren't they like 40%?
Yeah, which
crazy.
Well, the Eagles actually, I think they're 6. They run a lot of man. So that's why Jayden Reed can do nothing against man for half a season and still be a super productive receiver.
Right.
But Franklin, when he gets man, 40 yards, 6 receptions on 22 routes run. Now that's not huge numbers, but 6 receptions on 22 routes run and actually 10 targets on those 22 routes. He's a 45%.
That means Denver realizes to
rate.
What you were saying, right? Like they also realize, like, hey, if teams are in man, this guy gets open and we need to target him. I mean, again, like 45%? You said something crazy.
So 45.5%. He has a touchdown, which again, it's 1 touchdown, but on only 22 routes. So if you're scoring a touchdown every 22 routes, you'd be the best receiver in the NFL. And then Baltimore, 3rd worst in DVOA on deep passes. So that's exactly what we want if we're trying to play Troy Franklin, because we want that big bomb. Yep. We want that college connection coming back. And then when they throw it up, you just pray that he's going to catch it, because there's a reasonable chance he'll be in position past every defender on the field. But, it's 60-40 on whether or not he'll actually bring it in. But, that's why he's down here at 4,000. But, yeah, again, someone on this Denver team is going to have a productive game against the Ravens, and it could be multiple guys, and none of them cost a lot. So, again, I'm looking at a team that plays more man than average. That makes me like Franklin more, especially when I factor in that they haven't been good on deep balls. But, yeah, you could talk me into almost any Denver wide receiver just because of this matchup and their price points.
I'm just laughing because, we have reached the point of the year where, we were talking about this today with a friend, that I'm going to 9 times out of 10 just pick on certain defenses. And again, that's why I was saying like Olave, Taysom Hill, like Carolina's defense sucks. I always want pieces of those guys. Speaking of Taysom Hill, let's move on to the tight ends. Again, I'm disappointed because I'm seeing everywhere that other people are on it. Not that that's surprising, because again, the case is so simple, but it feels like it's Taysom Hill week. Like it really does. You look, he returned last week. They got smoked. So, right, like worst possible game script for him. He still saw 4 targets, caught 2 passes, had 4 rush attempts for 20 yards. Now they're getting Carr back. Again, Carolina, most rushing touchdowns allowed in the NFL, 2nd most rushing yards. And the last time we saw him with Carr and healthy, he scored 2 touchdowns and like 17 points in the first half versus my Atlanta Falcons. He only had like 20 total yards because, again, he had those 2 touchdowns. And then he got hurt and didn't play in the second half. It really swung that game, and ironically has swung their season. I just feel at 3,800, when I am now officially back in on just punting straight up on tight end every week. Like I'm just going to, I know, like I ended up playing Njoku some Well, actually, no, I didn't. In MME, I ended up playing him a little bit. In cash, I literally went all in on our boy K. Dotton. Unfortunately, he is not there this week. Like, there's other guys, again, like Laporta. I think this is the last week you can play Laporta with some conviction because the Jameson deal is real. And that was what I said last week when we were talking on the MME show. He saw his highest targets of the season in a game that they smoked the Titans and didn't exactly throw it a lot, but it's just because Jameson's not there. So the pecking order gets a lot easier, right? Like basically it's St. Brown and then it's Laporta. So, I mean, no surprise he had his highest game, all that. Goddard, if he is a go, which is iffy, like I don't hate that play, but ultimately it's going to be either Taysom Hill for me again versus Carolina because it just the run defense is so bad. And I just think he'll get at least a rushing touchdown. That's all we need at 3,800 and we're good. Or I am still in on Jonnu Smith. Last week surprised me very much. I did not expect him to get 6 targets with Tua back. The healthy, Hill, Waddle, competitive game. Like, he still got 6 targets, 4 catches, 20 yards. And I think there's a chance they get absolutely smoked. And Buffalo, the other thing is Buffalo's pass rush is legit. And the one thing I took from the Arizona game last week, watching a little bit of it, was they have made it very clear to Tua to not take hits and get rid of the ball quickly. That's going to mean more stuff to Jonnu Smith, who, again, is more of an underneath type guy. So, like, those are the 2 plays for me, like 38, 3,500. Again, I can't even pronounce the name, Calcaterra or whatever for Philly. Like maybe, but I think that it's going to end up being those 2. And then, I'm sorry, I also missed to mention Noah Fant, again, if DK Metcalf is out again and he plays, I really like as well. Who are you looking at for tight end this week?
So you don't have interest in maybe doing another double tight where you go with Bowers?
He doesn't score touchdowns is the issue.
Well, yeah,
like
it's been a bad offense.
I agree. I mean, but that's like for cash, like MMA.
I see your point.
110%. But like his biggest game this year is 23.7 points, and like at 6K, he's 3 out of what 8 games hit the 3x. So, I mean, to be honest, like McBride versus Chicago is the one out of those that to me is more appealing because he's become basically their passing offense. And if you think Chicago get up, but my concern is what you said, and it's why I think really other than Swift, I don't want to play any of those guys, is like I could see that quickly becoming just a slugfest. A lot of James Conner, a lot of DeAndre Swift, like who can kind of out ugly who, the QBs both running around a little bit. And then from there, like Njoku, yeah, definitely interested. I would rather play Tillman if I'm going to play a Cleveland pass catcher because he's cheaper. And it's just these tight ends, man, like they're freaking infuriating. You know what I mean? Like they've just been so kind of inconsistent that I would kind of rather take a punt on somebody cheaper to where, again, like Laporta, you could talk me into for real. Gun to my head, if you really think the Atlanta game is going to shoot up, Pitts has been like, it's shocking, Joe. Like, who thought we'd live in a world where 15.8, 10 points, 13.5, 25.1, and he's doing it with just 5 or more targets the last 4 weeks. Like, it's not like he's getting these huge targets. He did it last week on 5 targets. But I like the cheap guys, man, because I think there's more of a chance that they, hit like 4 or 5 times their number, obviously. And it's just with such a crapshoot tight ends, man. If it doesn't hit, I think you can survive in cash. Totally different if it's MME. I'm okay with like, let's play bully tight end. Let's spend up because it's going to be unique. It's going to be different. But right now in cash, like, I just think we have enough information with the wide receivers and running backs. I want to save every dollar I can within reason and spend it on the Kyron Williams and the A.J. Browns of the world.
I mean, I'd be hard-pressed to argue against you. I will say I think I'm a little bit higher on Laporta than you are this week. Although, like you said, I think this is kind of the big opportunity. He's still under 5,000, and also Jameson Williams is not out there. You look recently, at what Green Bay's done against tight ends, and you feel pretty good. I mean,
Right,
3 of the last 4 weeks.
McBride smoked them.
Right.
The number's
And,
not
yeah.
right, to your point. Like, it's not. We talked about this a few weeks ago. 24th is actually worse. If you look their first 5 weeks, they played like the nobody of nobodies that have tight ends. Teams like the Colts, the Vikings with Johnny Munt. Like, I mean, these guys that, like, it's worse than it is. Then Parkinson have like 7 for 52 versus.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Colby Parkinson, who's been Mr. I'm running every route and catching 0 passes this season. He had 13 targets and 7 receptions in that game. Now, obviously, that efficiency is not great. He had 52 yards and 13 targets. But, yeah, 3 of the last 4 games, they've allowed at least 8 receptions and double-digit targets in 2 of those games. The only game where they didn't get smoked by a tight end in the last month was against the Texans, who are just generally not looking at their tight ends a lot. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So, Laporta is definitely high up for me. I am with you on the Jonnu Smith. I think that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, if I'm going cheap, I think I'm probably going Jonnu. Otherwise, Laporta is probably going to be my main play. I might still throw Bowers in just because that's one of the better ways to attack Cincinnati's defense. But, I mean, yeah, this is a bad offense. And the Bengals defense has more or less been playing better recently. So, probably a safer play to go with Laporta, which, again, I think that's a shootout. So, I like that one. And then, yeah, I think, to your point, if you're all in on Cousins or Dak, either of their tight ends could make sense. But, yeah, I think I'm probably going to be mostly going Laporta, Jonnu.
Ferguson has been so inefficient too. Like, I went back and looked, the targets he's had is outrageous. Like, he's had some huge target games. He's done nothing with it, to your point of maybe they just don't have any guys.
It's CeeDee Lamb, again, the only guy I trust in that Dallas offense, which is that's my main Dak problem, where I want to be all in because I think game script, it makes so much sense. But it's like my preference would probably be that Dallas gets up in that game and then Cousins has to light it up. And then again, London at 6,700, I think is awesome. And then I did see something, and I should have saved it on my phone, where it was about, I think it was like I think it was 2 high versus 1 high this year. And then, I had everyone charted out from all the teams, and it was like Pitts and London were on like opposite ends. And of course, for the life of me, I can't remember exactly. Maybe because one guy was smoking 2 high, and one guy was smoking 1 high. And I'm like, if I look up and I see that Dallas
would assume it would be Pitts on the 1 high and London on the 2 high, if I had to guess.
I feel like that probably makes sense. But yeah, if I can find that,
run the Tampa 2 at a high rate, because obviously he burned Tampa last week.
I would generally think of Todd Bowles as like a 1 high guy.
That's what I'm saying. So that would fit that build that Pitts ended up, burning them. I would be shocked if it's not Pitts, because again, it would mean that just London's such a better route runner. Like, that's one thing about Kyle. I love him, but man, like, he's not the guy that's able to get open the way I thought he was. To where London, for his size, like, it's why I'm so big on London moving forward. I think in Dynasty he needs to now be like in this offense a top 5 wide receiver, because he is the perfect X receiver, and it's going to be a wonderful matchup. All right, defenses real quick, and then we'll get out of here, because what a surprise. We've gone an hour and 18 minutes.
Not us.
I know, right? We love to hear ourselves talk. God, man, it's tough to be it's one of those weeks that I'm probably going to do your Giants a lot. Where
I probably am too.
Right? Like, it's 4 points basically or more in every game but one this year. And it's because of the sacks. They get to the quarterback so much that it guarantees points. I actually maybe Jane Daniels is a little banged up to me. Like, I know, obviously, with the play he made at the end, it's hard to say that you really think Jane Daniels is that banged up. Yeah, I do think but he did not look quite as crisp as he did in other games. I know Chicago is a really good defense. I think your defense is pretty good. Like, I really do. Like, the offense is now, unfortunately, Tracy or bust, but I do think that the defense is legit. And I mean, they got 5 points the first time they played them. 2,300, to be honest, I'd take that. Like, if that's, what we're going to get, we're okay, because the rest of the slate in the cheap range,
it's not great.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, maybe Denver or Chicago, like at 2,700, you could talk me into, but I don't really trust any of those defenses. LA and, Seattle, like, you would have to get up. Like, if I'm going to spend, I want to take like Tennessee at New England, I think would be the one that I would want. Oh, excuse me, New England at Tennessee and take the title.
Yeah, I think you could. That's one of those, which, I mean, obviously just because the money difference, I'd probably go New England. But that's a game where it's like whoever you think wins that game is probably going to have a really productive defensive day. So that makes sense to me. I mean, Seattle, you could talk me into if Nakua doesn't play, because if it's Rams at full throttle, then absolutely not. I have zero interest.
Yeah, God almighty.
If it's like, all right, Rams playing Seattle, maybe this is kind of about, maybe Seattle can bounce back a little bit if they're able to just focus all the coverage, steer it all towards Cup.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Nakua's out there, absolutely not. I mean, you could maybe after last week you're in a fade the Bears mood and you like the Cardinals, but
no, I actually think that I would take the Bears defense way before I would take Arizona. And they're basically the same
that's true.
price,
They're pretty close. That's true.
They're 28,
you're
26,
right about that.
yeah.
So
what about
maybe
Buffalo?
The Bears
they've owned Tua and the Dolphins in recent years. That's the other one that
it helps when Tua decides.
So many also,
it helps when Tua decides, you know what I'm going to do on this play? Lower my head into the chest of Damar Hamlin, because nothing could go wrong there. So obviously, I hope that doesn't happen again. But Buffalo, New England. If you're trying to spend up, those are probably the.
Oh, did I just lose Joseph? Yeah, I think he's pretty frozen. Well, we'll end it there, since I guess Joe is frozen in time. He looks really smart, though. I'll give him that for him. And I'm just proud he's got like a bookcase behind him. He's really upped his game. He's my boy. So sorry we ended abruptly there. Like I said, Joe just froze. It happens. Internet sometimes sucks. But for Keith and Joe, this is week 9 of the F6P NFL DFS Kickoff Show. Again, me and Chris Robin will be Sunday at 12 p.m. on the Fantasy Six Pack Sunday Social Show. Finishing. Oh, there he is. Oh, there he goes.
Naturally, my laptop died.
Oh,
I thought I had the juice. I did not have the juice.
Well,
but
we went an hour and 22 minutes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, like we said, probably going to be a lot of my Giants, because we do consistently get sacks. Probably still the biggest weakness to Jane Daniels' game is taking too many sacks sometimes. So that's probably the play, even though they'll probably put up like 27, 30 points on us. If we get, 4 or 5 sacks, we'll survive at 2,300. But yeah, if you're spending up, it's probably Bears, Bills, Patriots, something like that.
I'm sorry, that made me think of Dwight from The Office. Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
A little alliteration there.
It's the best, man. But other than that, anything else for week 9, or you want to get out of here?
That's it.
Well, again, for me and Joe, we appreciate you guys as always. I hope your lineups destroy. If they don't blame us. No, I'm just kidding. You can blame us. We're good with that.
If AJ Brown doesn't do good, then obviously you can blame me.
Oh, I'll be calling you if AJ Brown doesn't do good.
It's on me.
I'm kidding. But we will talk soon, boys.